Okay, so my mom and my dad are both from Mexico, and that's where I come from. I was born there too, born in par partially raised, not really. I migrated here when I was 6 to 7 years old. I do remember that my mom taught me my ABCs, and I think that's all she really thought I needed to know. I think I got around pretty quick just because I saw familiar faces, and so that kind of made me feel more comfortable being there. I don't think I really thought so much about it because there was just so much going on. I hadn't fully like processed it. But I think also I have an older brother, and just knowing that he was there too made me feel a little bit better. I think I didn't think much of it. I didn't really fully understand like that I was not in Mexico. I just understood that there was like it was, my first day of school and in that school, and so to me it was just like a part of the process. I wasn't like fully aware with what was going on. Yes, so during parent teachers conference, I do remember that like they would say I was disobedient, or like I wouldn't pay attention or listen to them when they would call on me. They said that I wouldn't like respond, and so they started to notice some things about me that like were kind of off. Aside from the fact that also like I had a huge language barrier, but even just like with something simple as calling my name, they realized that something was not like something was off. They didn't know.
Your parents didn't notice?
No,
Okay.
we're a loud family, so they just thought that when I wouldn't respond, I was just not paying attention on purpose. Like I was doing it on purpose to not listen. So when they did the hearing eval, that's when they were, notified. They were informed that I had a hearing disability, but they had no idea. They just thought, oh yeah, it's like that's just who she is. Sometimes she doesn't listen. So yeah, they. Yeah, I didn't know I had a hearing disability because mine was mild. So although I could still hear. It was just like the little things like we would play a game. I don't know what it's called, but we would have to whisper things to each other. I couldn't participate. Yeah, because like I couldn't hear. But I just thought everybody else was like me. Yeah. They discovered that I want to say um, so I migrated like in November. I don't remember when they did the evals, but they said my mom said that it took them a while to get our hearing aids because they needed to get like approved through Medicaid and all of that, and they didn't know how to do all of that. Like they just didn't know where to have access to resources. My mom said that like they just suggested we get help, but they didn't provide the resources. I think yeah, they said that like when I was already in first grade up until like, because it took them like 8 months to get approved or something. So I want to say like in first grade going to second grade, because I remember in second grade I would show it to like my friends. Yeah. I didn't think much of it then. I think it's when I went through like the teenage years, that's when I became more self-conscious. At first it was cool because everybody was like, whoa, what's that? And I would tell them it would help me hear better. Um, so at that point I didn't think much of it. It was just in my teenage years that I became more self-conscious and insecure. I think most of the time.
Most of the time you read
Yeah.
one. So
And it's hard because like they teach you that you need to make eye contact. Like I had to train myself to do that because I spend most of my time reading lips. I don't think anyone really told me that like, oh, it's important, it's healthy that you make eye contact. I kind of just picked up on that after like I graduated high school. I learned that it is important. Nobody really like called me out on it. I would just tell them, hey, just so you know, I read lips. Like that's why it's there at your mouth, you know. Until after high school, that's when I started to learn like through my occupations, like, hey, it's important that you make eye contact. So it was a learned behavior. It was something that I had to learn, train myself to do. Yes, because I missed a lot of my sounds. So all of those sounds that you would learn in kindergarten, I missed all of that. I remember my mom still reminds me like when we would sing the Jingle Bell, or we wished you a Merry Christmas. She said that I would say, we wished you a Chihuahueño. You know, just like stuff that what I would think we would say, I would pick up on that and I would just say it. But I had no idea what we were saying. Yeah. So and even now, like, I still have a hard time saying my CH, you know, and it has a lot to do with my hearing disability. I did speak to the coordinator, the disability coordinator, and I told her if it was okay if she could tell like the professor, so that the professors had that in mind, especially during group discussions. Like it's really hard on me, and I'm not really like the type of person to let like my peers know like, hey, I have a hearing disability sometimes. So I kind of just suck it up. Yeah, it's overwhelming, but I get through it. Yes, I had a low reading level. I had a really low reading level. Um, I did really good in math, but yes, I was not really good at reading at all. Yeah, so I guess being labeled as something is perceived as something negative. So obviously my parents would try to do everything in their power to like, avoid that. They just couldn't, they were in denial, they couldn't accept it. Um, but I think with me, I have an older brother who's genetic, so he's also hard of hearing. With us, I think they became more open-minded, and it was a learning experience for them. It's something that they learned with us as like we were discovering our disabilities and everything. I think I think they try to keep it to themselves because they didn't want to like show that they were like hurting. But I don't know. I think to them, I don't think they saw it as something negative. They did see that like we would discuss my goals, so they would focus on that. Like how can I improve my goals? They saw that I was like determined, and so I don't like maybe between them they would talk about it, but I don't think they. Yeah, I don't think they ever showed how they felt about the whole IEP. I did grow up very insecure, and it took me so long, like so long. Even in college, I held back going to university because I was going to be in like a larger school because of my insecurities. Um, I had like a lot of identity crisis. I didn't know where I fit in, like whether I wanted to fit in with like the Hispanic community or like the deaf community. It was a lot. It was so much. My older brother, because we're both genetic, so we kind of have both the same like situation, and we just talk to each other and my parents. Yes, that's it. I mean, my brother, he's kind of the one that like, opened that pathway. He's the one that, showed us what college is, and I kind of followed his footsteps. But my dad has always been like a huge, I wouldn't say like a huge fan of education. He values education, so he would always encourage us to go to college after high school, even though he doesn't have any college education. But he always wanted us and encouraged us to go to college. I think like my first 2 years of college, that whole like I not only did I go to college, but I was also just kind of like working with myself, to teach myself to love myself, to accept myself. So during those years, I didn't, talk to a disability coordinator. It wasn't until I transferred to here that I finally decided to seek all the help that I needed, because I deserved to get those help. But before that, I still hadn't fully accepted like my disability because I was kind of like ashamed of it. But yeah. I
don't know
know,
the
I
answer
don't
to
think so
that.
because here like like I noticed here at a very early age, they pick up on things and they get help immediately. They do everything, to accommodate those in need. And if I grew up here and my parents were informed, I think things would be different. Um, but because it wasn't like that, and what was modeled in front of me was just like I want to say like a normal human person. Um, I would compare myself, and I would notice that I was different than them. Um, so I think things would be different. I think if I maybe even teachers, they are not fully informed either. Maybe now they are, but then I wish they would encourage themselves to learn more about what the disability is so they can figure out how they could have helped me with my disability, even if it was just to like accommodate or speak slowly. I do wish that like they probably would have checked in with me and say, hey, are you doing okay? To pay more attention to what was going on instead of just like treating us all as a whole. I think if they would have done that then, I think it would have been easier and I wouldn't have all this like stress and pressure on me. Yes, so I do want to be an ELL teacher, um, but I especially want to be a teacher because I come from that background and I have, plenty of experience of what it's like to not like be paid attention to. So because of that, I want to be a teacher so I can reach out to those who are going through the same thing or they just have a disability or they are in ELL. And just because like I love kids in general, I feel like I can vocalize for those and, do my research and figure out how I can make their life easier too. Yeah. I know, I'm excited. I am so excited. I am. I just felt like that's the way I can use what I went through. Like I can actually do something with it instead of just being upset or whatever. Yeah. Yes. So growing up, once they identified me as an intellectual disability, I grew up that way up until high school. And it wasn't because of, it wasn't, if it wasn't for my seminar teacher that caught on how I was doing with my math, she noticed that it was not an intellectual disability. And so she requested that I get tested on that, and they managed to figure out that it was a physical disability, and by then is when I got out of all my special ed classes. But I was identified as an intellectual disability because I was like really low on my reading level, and because of that, they just put me on an IEP. But yeah.
That's supporting to go with that.
It's not the same as the first conversation we had. But
big,
you mentioned that it takes forever for them to like figure out what's going on, and I agree. Like mine was like vice versa. It was like they thought I had an intellectual disability, and then they realized I didn't, and so it was a lot for me because like I thought I was dumb, you know. And it's hard to swallow that pill, like, and then you're put in classes with others that actually have like Down syndrome and, you know, like serious intellectual disabilities, and I would notice like I don't think I'm that bad. Like I know what's going on, I understand the material, but